Welcome back to Seven Gulches. We've made a few videos on the sawmill and the sawmill shed and received a ton of feedback on it. Now we are consolidating all of the good, the bad, and the should have dones into one comprehensive package. We share the original diagrams, the modifications along the way, noteworthy tips from commenters around the world just like yourself. We will talk about accessories that are actually worth it, along with our plans for the future and additions that are still on the way. So grab a notepad and settle in because you're gonna want to take notes. This is a big one.
Most people put their logs in on the operator's side, but I thought that given our layout here and the way I want to operate, it would be more convenient if I left the operator side for bringing lumber and stuff out this way, or big timbers out on my rollers this way, where I can put my trailer right here and use my loader to put them on, and leave the other side for bringing my logs in. So I put my log ramps on the non-operator side, and I actually had Ron, the guy that does my trucking, help me design these, and we actually copied from the guys in Advocate that have a similar mill. So anyway, I'll show you how we put our logs on from our log deck. We have these little fold down ramps that go right onto the track, and I put that little piece of wood there so I don't damage my tracks, because the logs are pretty heavy and you don't want to slam these down on them either. So we just put a little groove in the wood with power saw. That protects the tracks so we don't bend or dent the tracks. I'm going to use a cant hook. We have these perfectly level with the bunks. The height of this and the height of the bunk is perfectly level. I'll see if we can put one on here and show you what we do. So these beams came from an old bridge, and the guy that built it, he kind of salvaged them and had them kicking around, and when I asked him about helping me make a set of ramps, he came up with this idea, and he made that, the little fold down parts, and really great for me. I can put 10 or 15 logs on this deck. I use my log loader, which is the trailer on the back of my tractor with a boom, and I can put the logs on from the side, and I don't have to come anywhere near my mill. So there's no danger of damaging the tracks or the mill shed or anything like that. A lot of people use their machines to drop the logs onto the log deck, onto the rails. I don't think that's in the end going to would be a very good ending, because after a while you're going to damage something. And this way here, everything is rolled on, and there's no real chance for damage. Anyway. This isn't a particularly nice log, but we'll put it on and show you what we do. So you don't even need the PV because everything's level here, and when you have good round logs like this. If you have a bigger log, I use a longer handled PV, but this one is great for this. It's just a little cant hook. After I get it on, the log stops up so it can't come back off on me. I leave my log dogs up until after I have the log on, and then I dog it in place when I'm ready. You have to remember to put these back up so the mill can run by. That's the story of our log deck. So the first thing we did when after we bought the mill and started putting it together, was we got a contractor to put a really good concrete slab down. I know a lot of people just do their work right on the ground and level up with blocks, or the guys on the wheels, they just use their jacks to level up. But I wanted to be able to remove the sawdust, because a lot of sawdust around with these, chips, sawdust, bark, and I found with guys that have them just on the ground, it's hard to remove your stuff. You can't sweep it. This here, we sweep it all the time, and when we're milling, and we have a place where we can dump the sawdust. I have a front end loader with a tractor where when we sweep it out there, we can just pick it up. And You can see there's a little bit of sawdust around, but it makes a lot better working conditions, I find. So that's the main reason why we built the concrete slab, and we wanted the building to be permanent and sturdy. So we've had a number of people comment or ask us, why did you use a metal roof? And why did you make the roof that slant? Talk to in two different parts, I'll answer that. Metal roof, it's nice and easy to put on. I have a couple of friends that are very good at that kind of thing, and they did that, you know, for not a very high fee. And metal roofs, we get a lot of wet snow. We get a lot of heavy wet snow. Metal roofs allow that to slide off. So every time there's a heavy wet snow, the snow will slide off. I have a roof rake that I can take it off if I feel that it gets too heavy and it might collapse the building. But we haven't been in that situation yet, and we've had a lot of heavy snowfalls. So people have questioned whether we have enough rise over run on this, and we think that on a span 12 feet wide, if we have a 2 foot rise on that 12 feet, we think that that's enough. And I'm not an engineer, but it's steep enough to shed the snow and the rain that we get, and I think it's adequate. Now, you know, a building contractor or a construction engineer might give you a different opinion, but for us, that's been satisfactory, and we don't want to get too carried away with all the specs. You can see that it's steep enough for what we have. We just lost all the snow that was on it. We had a big snowstorm here the other day, and it was covered with snow, and last night it melted, and the snow's all off it, and the roof never collapsed.
So if he had to start over, what would he do differently? And how did he plan this? Let's look at the schematics.
This one here is our wide opening where the logs come in, okay? And it says 2x6 there, but we actually used 2x4s because we thought 2x6 was excessive.
Okay.
So there's two 2x8s together there, and they're broken in different places. They go all the way over to the edge of the building. Okay, so it's suspended by about 4 feet of solid underneath, and it's fastened very well there. It's fastened very well there. These braces, it's just a diagram, but the braces, there's braces outside that go all the way to the top, and there are braces underneath as well. So that it makes it pretty strong. Okay, these are 6x6 posts, and they're on post holders that are embedded in the cement, so they're not moving. It shows the opening from post to post being 20 feet, but it's not, because there are posts outside of those posts. So the opening itself, after it's all the other trim and boards, is actually just over 18 feet. Okay? So this is the high side. This is where the operator side of the mill, and we actually take the lumber out on this side or out through the end, depending on whether it's really big. And again, 6x6 posts. There's 3 on each side. This one we have 2x8s up here and 2x4s down here. It says 2x6, but we changed that to 2x4 after we started building because we realized that that was excessive. We have it braced very well, but these are truss work, and we have that all along. That's just a sample, but there's truss work all along, and then it's boarded in. We strapped it off after we had all this stuff, and we strapped it off, and we put vertical boards on. And one part we haven't finished yet. At the upper end, around the mill engine, where the engine and the saw are stored, we're going to do bats. We're going to do board and bats, but we didn't do that yet. I was waiting until the shrinkage was stopped, because we used actually lumber that we just milled when we built it. Now this is the wall at the end where, when the mill's idle, the saw and the everything on the carriage is up underneath it, and it's walled in. And it actually protects really well. And we put a piece of translucent material to make a window. It withstood the hurricane, so it's okay. That allows it to have a little bit of light in there in the daytime. Anyway, and the measurements are accurate. This side these are 7 feet. This side is 9 feet, and that gives it enough of a slope so that the snow basically comes off it. We haven't yet had a problem with heavy wet snow on the roof. If we did, I have one of those roof rakes anyway where I could take it off.
So let's talk about accessories that are actually worth it. At least they're useful in our situation.
One of the problems we've had, we put a roof on this for two reasons. One, on rainy days I like to be able to work, and I can't do my regular logging operations on rainy days, so we put a roof on this to enable us to work in the wet. However, we have a situation where when the water comes off the roof, hits that cement floor and collects there. So we've had a little problem. We've got a cure for it. We're going to take and put a drain pipe from this end out to shoot the water out to the back end of the mill and off into that ditch over there. So we're that's going to happen in the spring. That's not going to happen now unless I get really ambitious and climate change really happens quickly. But if you can see the water on the floor of the mill, and when it freezes it makes ice, so on cold days I can't work on that. But we want to be able to work whenever we need to mill something or whenever we have the urge to mill something. One of the things that I didn't do that I'm going to have to make some corrections on, there's water sometimes gets in a storm, and the plate around the bottom, I put sill gasket under it, but I didn't use treated lumber, and I'm going to have to put wood preservative on those plates because in 4 or 5 years they might rot, and I don't want that. So if I was doing it again, I would have treated them before I put them down, the bottom plates. I put wood preservative on the 6x6s, but I never thought about water might sit in here. So after a big storm, we get a little bit of snow or water in there. So that's one thing I would do differently. So these are the plates I'm talking about right here. The bottom plate that your studs that support your wall are on. I would put if I had pressure treated lumber, but wood preservative is just as good. You can do that yourself. It's a lot cheaper than buying somebody else's lumber. You can make your own lumber and put wood preservative on it. Another thing that I don't know if I would say do differently. I plan to do this anyway. I just haven't had time to do it. But I'm thinking about putting sliding doors on the opening that I can put out of the way when I'm working, but I can close when I'm not here to keep some of the weather out, because the roof keeps everything dry. My mill itself never gets wet, but we get water in on the floor, and if I had doors on both sides on that opening, and I don't think it's very hard to do. You can get those rails to put them on, and I'm going to look into that. But that's another suggestion that I would think about on your, if you want to have it completely weatherproof. You can't have these enclosed and work because of the gas motor, obviously. But if you could have, particularly on the windward side, which is up where my logs come in, if I had something there to stop the rain and the snow from blowing in, I could probably work all winter too. When I originally bought the mill, I bought the 4-foot extension above the standard mill. That would allow me to do 16-foot logs, but I wanted to do 18-foot logs, so I bought this 2-foot extension, and it just sticks out a little bit at the end. So I'm not going to build my shed bigger now, but I may cement out here so I can walk out around and put my sawdust further out before I pick my sawdust up with my front end loader, so it's not a problem. But that's something I didn't anticipate. Just like everyone, we don't know everything about all this stuff when we start. So for those that are looking to make longer logs than 16 foot, and if you have to get the small extension or even a big one, calculate that in when you do your building. Having a foot or two extra at each end over the length of the mill gives you room to work, gives you room to set things down, and things like that. And I just didn't know when I first built this. I didn't have this when I first built the shed, that's so. Anyway, if you find any of these suggestions helpful, tell us in the comment section. When we do a lot of milling at night, particularly in the summer and the fall. We do them at night because I have a wasp allergy, and wasps are attracted to sawdust, so it's nice to be in the dark when they're not active. So we added a solar light. It's an LED light that lights up the whole yard when you walk out here, and we have to have light so that we can pile lumber out in our little collection area. The mill took a big hit when we had one of those windstorms. There was a tree that I thought was clear of it, but it actually blew down and was in striking distance, and it kind of made a little bit of a sag on our beam on that side. So we reinforced that beam. We put a 2x10 because there was room in the braces to put a 2x10. There was a natural spot for it, and we put that in, and everything is really sturdy now. So we've got 3 layers of 2-inch planks laminated together, and that's stronger than what it needs to be. We had a problem with water coming off the roof, then running down and filling the gutter there, filling the little trench I made, and running into my cement pad. So what we did, we put a nice piece of got vinyl eavesdropping on. Took about half an hour to put on, no problem. And now unless we have a big wind, we don't have any water on the mill. What we've got here are some boards that we cut 3/8 of an inch thick. And what we're going to use them for is we're going to use them for what we call board and bat on the outside of this building, and also inside my room in the shed that I'm making. And we've got a whole bunch of them dug together here, and we're going to try to cut them in 3-inch increments. We want them 3 inches wide, and you can see on the outside of the shed we've got some on already, and we just need 10 or 15 more, and this will do it. The lumber that we use is rough lumber. Obviously, when you get lumber off of this, it's not perfect, although it's pretty good. And what we've done is we've decided to use thinner boards because they'll flex over the unevenness, and they fill those cracks in and they stop wind and water from getting in. You need a whack of bats in a short time. We got 13 bats to put across the back that are all the same size, so we just have to measure once and check it, and then we'll make 12 more. $84. Looks good to me.
So let's talk about accessories that are actually worth it. At least they're useful in our situation.
So shortly after we got the mill, my wife and I, we decided we would get lights to put on the mill. There's a kit that this company, Norwood, makes available, and we had 2 reasons. I like to work in the evenings, and when later in the evening it's hard to read the index. But with the lights, you can do all that measuring perfectly, and you can see. I'll show the lights in a few minutes. But I had another reason. I have a wasp allergy, and in the summertime when you're milling on hot days, the mill produces sawdust, and that attracts wasps. So I do more of my milling in the evenings, and actually after sundown, when the wasps go away. They go to sleep. So that way there, I'm a little safer. I feel a little bit better about it, and it works for all of us. Anyway, the light system is really fantastic. Once you get in here and get it started, I'll show you here. There's a switch that you just install on your battery, and you turn that on. I don't do it until the mill is running. That way your battery won't drain. But a little switch there, just a little on-off switch. And then there's lights in 3 different places. This one up here shines on your index, so you can see your measurements, and just as clear as day when that light is on. It's a very bright light. There's another light down here. This light shines on your lubrication system, your blade guides that are movable, and you can see the blade perfectly well. And you can also see the wood that you're sawing when it enters the wood. And when you're sawing, you should watch your blade almost all the time to make sure it's not going to hit anything and it's not waving. You can see when your blade is waving, and in that light you can do all that just the same as you could in the daytime. And then there's big floodlights on the front here. We've got the big floodlights up here, and at night this whole area is just like daylight. It's bright, workable. You can see out in the yard actually with those lights. They're that bright. The first accessory that I highly recommend for everybody is these toe boards. These toe boards, you can put them on any bunk. They bolt on and off in about 2 minutes. They get a little hydraulic jack. They have rollers on them, and you can use them for two things. One, if you want to reposition your log so that it's over the bunk the way you want, you can put the toe boards both up with a little hydraulic jack. Takes you 2 seconds. Roll that, set them back down, and you're away. The other thing, this is actually probably more important. When you're sawing, you know, every sawyer knows you should try to get the core of the log or the heartwood or the heart of the log centered, parallel to the bunks. So with your tape and with your toe board, you can measure where the centers are at each end, and you can raise or lower the toe board at the end that you need to raise or lower, and make sure that you have that core centered. That'll stop your wood from not having straight grain. It'll prevent wood from warping as much when it dries. So they're just a very useful tool, and if you don't have them, you're going to have to do something to work on that centering. The next accessory that I got, where I'm doing this by myself most of the time, for people that are in that situation, this is important. It's called a dog assist. What it is, you can adjust it in and out depending on the size of your log. You can slide it along the rail that it's on, and it's got notches that you can move it up and down for the size of your log. But what I do is when I've cut my first cut and got my good face on my first side, when I roll it up with my cant hook or PV, then I put that up against it and it'll hold the log from rolling back. Okay, that way there I can leave it alone, take my hands off the PV, and use my dogs to put the log in firmly in place, make sure I've got it vertical. Another set of accessories I got, and this is just something that's useful to me in my situation, I'm going to build a couple of bridges, and I have some bridges that I have to maintain, so I make some heavy timbers. Heavy timbers for a guy my age are pretty hard to manage. So what I did, I got these log rollers. And they just lift up and slide over. I won't bother putting them all up because it's a nuisance, but put them up, take the log off the mill, put it out towards the end, and I've got that loader right out there that I can just grab them when I get them out halfway out, and it'll pick them up right off the mill, and it's worked. So I'm happy with those, but that's just unique to me. For regular guys doing just regular boards, 2x4s, 1x8s, that kind of stuff, you don't need those, right? So it would be a waste of money for people that aren't cutting heavy timber. That's all I really will use them for, and I've used them already and they do work. When I bought the mill itself, the original order, I ordered the mill with one extra 4-foot section on the track. So that's part of the mill. That came with my original order. When I started to mill, I milled quite a few 16-foot logs, and I found that it was a little bit annoying that I had to move the log around to make sure I could get it where the blade would cut all the way through it. A log that you cut in the woods with proper measurement is a 16-foot 6 log. So to get the whole length of the log cut, I had to do quite a lot of what we call stick handle. I had to move it around a little bit. So what I decided to do after I investigated, I bought this extra 2-foot section, and that allowed my carriage to go all the way through. I didn't have to move the logs around any. I could just roll them off my ramp onto the mill, and away we'd go. This 2-foot section here is just an extension of the tracks. It goes on with pins. There's 2 adjusters that on each side to get it level and up and down at the right height of the tracks. It didn't take very much time to figure it out. I can take it off in a matter of minutes, and I can put the log stops back on, which gives me more space at the end here. So if I'm only doing 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot stuff, I take that off. I can take it off, and I have a little bit more room to work out here, and that's good. But most of the time I have it on because I'm doing some longer stuff, and I find it very convenient. It's a good addition to the mill. I looked at some other accessories that I'm sure they're of use to some people, but I couldn't find a value in them. And there's some that I may buy later. But that's the nice thing about all these portable mills. You can just keep adding on and build on to what you need with your business, or with your, if it's not a business, a hobby or an active pastime. But anyway, that's my accessories rant for the day. If you have questions about what we do with them, or why we bought them, or how we use them, feel free to put them in the comments below on this video. If there are any accessories that you would recommend as a mill user, it doesn't have to be Norwood, anyone. If you think there's other accessories that you find really useful, make a comment, and that'll help some of the people following this video string make it more interesting for all of us.
So that's the sawmill and the sawmill shelter. Now let's talk about what's coming next and what this structure has to do with it.
When I make lumber orders for people, I always have a whole bunch of stuff left over. It's like over there, that's all just leftovers. Really good stuff, 2x4s, 2x10s, all kinds of boards and things like that. But when you leave it laying around outside, you see, most of the time I have an order, they come and pick it up, and that's great. But the stuff that's left over, it'll sit there unless I stick it in a pile with proper stickers, and that takes time. So sometimes it gets that black coating on it from sawdust and wet. So we wanted to be able to have some good lumber on hand when people want, a couple of boards or a couple of planks. So we decided we would build a lumber rack where we could keep it properly piled, properly stacked, and it would basically stay under cover. So my friend Carl Peterson, he's a really good handyman carpenter, and he also does great woodworking too, by the way. Anyway, he's basically done all the work on this little deal I have with him, and he's put this together. We made the frame out of pretty rugged 6x6s, and we've got the roof. Will have metal roofing on it. We're going to close the sides in eventually. We're going to leave the front open, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 8 different shelves for various types of lumber, and we haven't finished it yet, but it's pretty well along, and it's on a very rugged foundation. The posts are fastened to those little blocks that are in the ground there that Carl made. They're made out of 2x6s and 2x8s, and they're pressure treated, so they'll last quite a while. And this is rugged. There's no play in this. It's well braced. You can't make it rock, and that's before we have the walls boarded in. Anyway, that's what this building's all about, and probably in a month or so we'll have a finished product we'll put up to show you, and hopefully full of lumber. So on the roof we're going to put metal roofing, just exactly the same as the mill. When we're finished with this, it will look like it belongs in the same enclave as the mill. It'll look the same from the outside. We'll probably do board and bat just to spruce it up a little bit, and we'll have that nice green metal roofing that we get from Harrison's Building Supplies. The most common thing people are looking for are usually 2x4s, 2x6s, 1x6, 1x8. So we'll probably have those on the bottom. Stuff on the very top will just be things that we've cut out, like those 2x10s over there, that every now and then people get 2x10s or 2x12s for making staircases. So we'll have that kind of stuff up on top. We're not going to put any hardwood out here. I've got hardwood drying in the shed, but we'll have the most common things on the bottom 2 layers. Then further up, stuff that we don't sell quite as much of, and just want to have on hand. We want to have half a dozen of each type of thing in case somebody's short a board or two, and they can come in and pick it up here. And I don't want to get into huge orders anyway. I don't want it. That's not my really intention for the mill. although it started to turn into a little bit of a business.
Can you talk about the like the dimensions, like how far back?
Yeah, so we made it. We made the building 16 feet long because the longest stuff that people generally buy is 16 foot. Most of the time it's 8s, 10s, and 12s. But we made it so that if we do have 16-foot stuff, we can put it in there. We made it 12 feet wide, and we've got little walkways down the side so we can put stickers in before we pile the lumber properly. And it's 8 feet high at the back and 10 feet high at the front, so there's plenty of slope there when we have those wet snowstorms. There's plenty of slope for the snow to slide off. So if you see all these boards and planks over here, most of those are just left over from orders that I've done up for people, and I never really had a place to store them, and if there's nobody wants them immediately, if you leave them laying around with sawdust and wet and not properly stuck and not properly covered from the elements, it'll get that black. Well, people think it's mold. I'm not sure. I don't think it really is, but anyway, if you leave lumber out, fresh lumber out, and it's wet, it'll get that discolored, and then people don't want to buy it. Obviously, don't want to use it. So we decided to make the mill shelter or the lumber shelter for that purpose, so we can properly store our lumber.